Hello. Today I am going to explore the words of St. Paul in the New Testament when he says, first of all, he says the Jewish people are spiritually blind. And how do you, from his point of view, how do they come spiritually blind, if you were to ask him? And St. Paul would say, and he does say, that what has happened is God has placed a veil over the Jewish people's minds so that they cannot recognize Jesus as the Messiah. So spiritual blindness, as far as the definition is concerned concerning St. Paul, is that there's a veil being put over the minds of all Jewish people. So this would be from birth, so it's something, inherited. It's a condition of spiritual blindness, of there being a veil over the Jewish people's minds, that so when they read the Hebrew scriptures, they cannot see Jesus in any of the scriptures. They can't see it. That's his argument. You look at scriptures like Isaiah 53 and you read it and view it as pertaining to Jesus and also other prophecies. So you say, well, it's obvious. I see, when I read the scriptures, I see this and I see that, Hebrew scriptures. And it's all about Jesus. It's obvious to you because this is the way you're reading it. And so, as far as St. Paul is considered, he's come to this position that the Jewish people are spiritually blind, that God has placed a veil over them. The question is, what made him think of a veil? Why has he chosen the metaphor, the word veil? What's he getting at? What he's referring to? Well, if you examine in detail all the Hebrew scriptures, which I can't remember because I'm not very well now. I've got severe ME, so I hope you'll bear with me because it's hard recalling information and expressing myself. I get tired and breathless. So you've got the holiest of holies, the inner sanctuary of the temple, right, which the high priest would only go into that inner sanctuary once a year, and that's for Yom Kippur. That would be for the Day of Atonement. And in that inner sanctuary there's a veil, right? So that means when Aaron, you've got the veil, right, here's the veil, and here's Aaron. Right, he's standing in front of the veil, making atonement, doing everything, all the blood and the thickness, sprinkling here and sprinkling there. It's all detailed in the Torah, in the 5 books of Moses, right? All the details. And he's doing that once a year on Yom Kippur, right, Day of Atonement. He's there in front of this veil, in the holiest of holies. Now, who's on the other side of that veil? Well, it's God. Because the purpose of that veil, as far as his understanding, is Aaron, is, well, over here is God. This is the veil. And the purpose of the veil is so that Aaron, who's standing here, can't see God. He can't see God because there's a veil, right? So the purpose of the veil is that he can't see God. Can I tell you something about veils that probably St. Paul didn't think about because he's a man? Well, that explains it. This is the right word, metaphor to use, is taking this veil, because first of all, here's Aaron standing in front of the veil. He can't see God, but guess what? God can see Aaron, right? God can see Aaron, but Aaron can't see God. That is actually what happens when you wear a veil. And this is what happens when you wear dark sunglasses. Particularly, those sunglasses like a mirror. But the darker the sunglasses, you can't see the eyes, can you? And a lot of men like wearing dark sunglasses because it does make them look more mysterious. And some men look better with they look better with sunglasses without, they take them off and he's a little bit disappointed because they look so handsome. It's just a mystique, and they look. I don't know, something about dark sunglasses on some men. It's really attractive, but it's just when they take it off, right? The sunglasses, and then you think, oh, he looks a bit ordinary. Oh, there's nothing much to him, and he looks so mysterious and interesting with the glasses on. But he's wearing those glasses because when he's wearing, or a woman is wearing dark glasses, or if they've got the mirrored glasses, you can only just see yourself in them, is you can't see the eyes. You can't see the eyes. You can't see the windows of the soul, right? What we call the windows of the soul. But can I tell you something? That man can see you perfectly clearly. And can I tell you something about women who wear the veil? Orthodox Muslim ladies who wear the veil. And I know about the veil because I live in a part of northern England where there is a large Muslim community. And I am used to seeing ladies in the veil, right? Traditional. It's invariably dark colours because again, there's perhaps no law, inverted commas, it has to be dark colours, but it tends to be dark colours, dark browns, black, grey, sort of dark beige colours. So it's not about, because the purpose is not to draw attention to themselves, because a veil is all about modesty, right? I want to keep on track here. So the veil is about modesty that these ladies wear, but can I tell you that all these ladies that wear the veil completely, even with it's over their eyes, can I tell you something? They can all see very clearly when they're out and about. When I go to Tesco, right, not Tesco, Asda, because it's near me, Asda, the branch of Walmart for my groceries, it's full of ladies, lots of ladies wearing the veil. And they don't fall over, they don't knock anybody over, they know exactly where they're going. They can see the difference between an onion and a potato. They can see the difference between an apple and an orange. They can see the difference between a Brussels sprout and a tomato. In other words, although they're wearing the veil, they can actually see everything clearly. But can I tell you something? You can't see their face. You can't see them, but they can see you clearly, right? If you watch these ladies shopping in the supermarket, there is no hesitation. It's not like picking something up. It's not like being partially sighted. When if you see somebody who's partially sighted or almost blind, they will pick up something like they will pick up, say, an onion, and they'll feel it, and they might even sniff it, because they've got to check, is this really an onion or is this really a potato? Because the vision is so poor that they can't see clearly. Right, and this is why they often ask for help. People who are almost blind ask for help from a staff member, because they can't tell. They're picking up and they're feeling, is this an orange? It feels like an orange, but it could be a lemon. I'm thinking, is it? Oh, it could be a grapefruit. You try if you can barely see and you can't tell the difference between a grapefruit and a large Jaffa orange, say. It's very, very difficult. What do you do when you've got different types of apples to choose from? You've got Braeburn, you've got Cox's, you've got Granny Smith's, you've got the whole selection, but you will never see at any time. I've never seen it. You'll never see a Muslim lady who wears the veil completely over her eyes. You won't see her struggling between the different apples and the fruit and things. She can see everything clearly. And this is just like God. So God can see clearly. Even though there's a veil there, God can see clearly Aaron here. He can see everything he's doing. He can see if he's sprinkling wrong. He can see if he made a mistake. Right, on Yom Kippur. I'm not sprinkling. How many sprinkles did you do? Was it 16 or... Was that 12? I can't... Good thing it wasn't me. Because it's an exact procedure. And God could see everything there. Right, through that veil. Just like Muslim ladies, when they're wearing the veil, they're going out shopping, they see everything. They can see everything. But the problem is, Aaron can't see God, and in the same way Aaron can't see God, you can't see the Muslim lady's face, right? Well, you definitely can't see their eyes. A lot of ladies, I forget the terms, the names for the different covering, the hijab, but some it's just here, isn't it? So obviously you could it's total clarity, right? There's nothing covered the actual eyes. But a lot of ladies, also Muslim ladies, like to completely cover. But I am talking about these ladies. The ladies that are completely covered with the veil, they can see everything. They never fall over, they never bump into a lamppost, they never bump into anybody, never knock over anybody, they find the money in the purse when they're paying for things in the shop. They see clearly. But the question I want to ask is, did St. Paul know that? This is a man who's come up with this image of a veil. He doesn't realise and hasn't thought about it in depth, because he's a man, right? He hasn't thought about it. And I don't even think the church has ever thought about this, because it's mostly men through the ages. It won't be in theology books. You won't, because most theology books, all the traditional writings, it'll all be men. It's all men, basically. I mean, women are have started writing. But even women will be believing this, because they probably haven't thought about this. Because they will assume, well, there's a veil there in the holiest of holies, right? You can't see it through a veil. But I'm saying the person looking through the veil can see clearly. The person wearing the veil can see clearly. God can see clearly through that veil. But the person who can't see through the veil is the observer. That's you and me looking at an Islamic lady who's got a veil. We can't see her eyes. We can't see her facial expression. We don't know. We just presume how she can't see anything. Of course she can see. She can see totally clearly. And I know this from repeated years. I've seen these ladies on a daily. I've seen them. I see them. I live in a city where it's full of lots of Islamic ladies wearing the veil. And they're running around, going here, going there in the shops and moving. They have no problem. They know exactly where they are. They can see everything clearly. They know the difference between notes, money. They know the difference. They don't have to sort of take off the veil. Is this a £5 note? Is this £10 note? They know. They can see clearly. And this is my argument, first of all, that I think demolishes it. Because the actual metaphor that St. Paul is trying to use is actually incorrect, right? And he's trying to use the veil in the temple as a way of giving almost scriptural validity to the view, like it's almost making it a spiritual truth, inverted commas, that because the high priest could not see through the veil, right, then he's saying the Jewish people, when they open the Hebrew scriptures, cannot recognize the Messiah from it. They cannot recognize Jesus. But what I'm saying is the whole metaphor of the veil from the Hebrew scriptures has been totally and completely misunderstood. And this is because it's a man. Now, anybody who's a Muslim lady watching this video, who wears the veil, right, will know exactly, she'll know I'm telling you the truth. And she will say, I get this, I totally understand what this woman is saying. And she would look and read the Torah, and she would understand that when Aaron was in the holiest of holies once a year on the Day of Atonement, that God would be able to see out and see everything that Aaron is doing, not because he's God, inverted commas, but because the very nature of a veil means you can see through it. Let's just say, I mean, obviously this would not have happened. This would not have happened, right, is, you see, it's how thick the material is. Because a veil is, excuse me, have a drink, right? A veil is thin by definition. Think of a wedding veil. A wedding veil is a partial disguise that a woman wears on a wedding day in some cultures. It's like mystique, you know. And then there's a ceremony, and the rabbi, the priest says, oh, now you are man and wife, and then the husband lifts the veil, and everybody goes, ah, you know, and he sees her face clearly. Before he lifts the veil, he can't see her face clearly. He can sort of bits and pieces. It's not clear. He maybe just recognises her, but he can't actually see all the detail, right? But that lady wearing the veil, getting married, standing there under the chuppah, will be able to see her husband very clearly, but he won't be able to see all the details of her features. Now, a veil, by definition, is sort of transparent. I think this is what I'm getting at, transparent. This is, again, we're going back to translation, right? All of that. There's a difference between, if you're talking about a curtain, there's different curtains. Again, you get different thicknesses of curtains. I mean, in the United Kingdom, we used to, before central heating and the earth getting warmer and warmer and warmer, in the United Kingdom, I can remember as a child, curtains were very, very, very thick. There's no way you could see through a curtain. Never. It's impossible. Curtains were meant to be thick, and the reason why they were meant to be thick was to keep out the cold. That's what a curtain was for in the United Kingdom. You know, draw the curtains, it's winter. It's not just about privacy, it's about keeping in warmth. So you have a window in your home, right, in a house or a flat. You're living in a cold country, it's winter, it's even colder. Of course, the glass is, you know, it's not double glazed. This is thin glass, and it's cold to the touch. It's possibly even perhaps not fixed properly, so it might be a bit of damp coming through, a bit of wetness coming through, and you touch the window in winter and it's sort of damp and wet, and there's little trickles of moisture and things like that. So you draw the curtains, and the curtains will be thick. They have to be thick. I remember our curtains were really, really thick, so heavy, and we were talking thick, heavy velvet, and they were really expensive. Curtains were for life. If you got curtains for a wedding present, we're talking decades ago, that was for life, those curtains. They would be for life. They're like a wedding present. You would have them for the rest of your married life because they were very, very expensive. You're talking thick material, heavy material. That it's not just about privacy, it's about keeping in warmth in your home. Because people wouldn't have the money to be necessarily burning coal fires day and night. They wouldn't first of all, they wouldn't be able to afford the coal. They wouldn't be able to have access to wood. There wouldn't be enough wood. They wouldn't have access to the wood. They would perhaps be not even well enough to carry the wood to bring back to the home. So whatever warmth you got from a fire, right, you had to keep it in that home, and so the curtain had to be very, very thick. Now this is the Middle East. Remember this temple that was built by God's specific instructions. In the temple and everything in it. This is a hot country. This is the desert. This is not Bolton, Lancashire in the north of England. This is not Scotland in the Hebrides in the middle of winter when it's absolutely freezing. This is not the Arctic. This is not Iceland. This is not Siberia in the heart of winter where curtains have to be very thick. This is in the desert. It's boiling hot. And it will be like a veil. It will be thin. It won't be thick. By the very nature of the country, everybody will be wearing thin fabrics. People won't be wearing, I wouldn't have thought, heavy fabrics. Very, very heavy. Because, again, you think about cotton. When I was a child, cotton was traditionally very, very thick. Hospitals, when you're in hospital bed sheets, material, we're talking fabric, was very, very thick. And you'd lie on it, and you went in hospital, it was gorgeous, really thick, silky smooth cotton, really quality, was just exceptional. Now when you go into hospital, it's like toilet paper, cheap toilet paper. It is like, you could see through that, that's like a veil. Honestly, the National Health bed sheets in the United Kingdom are like toilet paper. You could see through them. It's terrible. The quality of the cotton is appalling. And of course you have to remember they're washing and washing and washing and washing and washing these sheets continuously. And the cotton is wearing thin. And I've been emergency admitted the last few years with angina. Twice, and it's so rough. I thought if I'd known it was going to be that rough, the cotton, it's so thin, like cheap toilet paper. You know, you pay 10 pence a roll. You know, it's been reduced because nobody wants to buy it because you wipe it on your bottom and it's like, oh, it's so rough, and it's like you need to double it over and treble it over and over because it's so thin. There's nothing to it. And that's what the sheets were like. I thought next time I'll bring my own. I'll have an emergency bag ready in case I get chest pains and I have to call an ambulance. So, you know, I'm thinking, next time I'll have a bag, right? An emergency bag. I'll take it with me to hospital with a nice thick, beautifully soft cotton sheet to lie on, rather than this tissue paper. Right, excuse me, it's the breathlessness, right? Yeah, me. Everything takes strength, you see, even talking, and that's how the ME can affect some people like this. You just get tired out talking. So imagine that the temples constructed, all their furnishings, I would argue, would be thin. By definition, the people that are making these, that are weaving these materials and fabrics will be doing it. They won't be doing it very thick. I mean, again, I'm not an expert on old furnishings of the temple and old fabrics, because that's a subject in itself, which would be very interesting to research about old fabrics in biblical times, in ancient times. How thick were curtains? How thick were cottons? You see, all we know is from television, don't we, really? And we know that fabric deteriorates. And it's going to be washed and washed and washed and washed. So knowing exactly how thick furnishings in the temple are would be quite tricky, because there probably are things from ancient times that are preserved and found from, archaeologists. All the technical side, you know where I'm getting at. But things do wear out, don't they? And they get thinner and thinner just by being worn. The wearing of things and the marks of things and rubbing, trying to get. I mean, there was no, stains and things. People, would be rubbing to get stains out. And as soon as you start rubbing on fabric, you make it thinner. Right. And this all comes in with the veil. This is what I'm talking about. How thick was that curtain? You see, it's called a veil. And we're looking at the translation, and we're thinking about the original language that the Torah is in, Hebrew, what the Hebrew word means, what it's suggesting in the Hebrew, what kind of curtain does it mean? Is it, we think of a curtain. If you think of a curtain inside, you're living in Siberia, you're thinking of a heavy thing, a heavy velvet thing, that's so heavy you can't lift and move. But if you're living in a hot country, you're thinking almost like tissue paper. It's just very thin, right? Think about the veil in films, Lawrence of Arabia, and anything set in the desert, famous films, Cleopatra, Bible stories, and you have curtains and things, and around beds and around double beds, don't you, and around pharaohs and things. All of these things you see in films, don't you? And often they're quite thin, the fabrics. You can't actually see through them properly, but you can sort of, but you can't really. But the person behind that supposed curtain can actually see you standing there in front of them, right? You see this in films, don't you? So the question I'm posing is, how thick was that curtain? But you see, he is using the word veil. This is the standard word in the New Testament, veil. And the suggestion coming through, and the translations will be alluding to that, and the translations will be thinking, all the translations will be thinking of a veil. They will be thinking of thin material, something that Aaron cannot see through, right? But they've forgotten that God can see through a veil. And they've also not considered a woman's perspective, that when a woman wears a veil, and let's say if a Jewish woman wore a veil, right, for any number of reasons, and women would wear veil, if you had a skin complaint, if you had leprosy, anything like that, if you had eczema, now I'm thinking now, if you had eczema and you're a Jewish woman, you'd probably be required to wear a veil. You can't walk around like that. You'd perhaps need to wear a veil. You know why you would need to wear a veil? As a Jewish Orthodox woman, if you got eczema or something like that, something like that, you'd need to cover your face to indicate to those around you that you've got a skin complaint and don't come too close. Because when a woman or anybody got a skin complaint, they have to separate themselves from the community, and this is to prevent it spreading, right? There's no creams and lotions and things like it. And you think about things like chickenpox, which are catching. Chickenpox is catching, right? So if you come up with I've had chickenpox lots of times. You look what state you're in. You want to bet you wear the veil with that. I'm being quite serious. It's awful. And so in fact, in a physical condition could require you, and the rabbis would probably instruct that if you got something like that, you would need to wear a veil. And it could be that men would be required to cover their face as well. It's not inconceivable that the rabbis might say to an Orthodox Jew, you're thinking if they're getting a skin complaint or chickenpox or anything, you must cover your face. First of all, it's horrible to look at, quite frightening, and it's very severe. But the more important reason is the community and those around you must be aware that if you're going anywhere near the public or where somebody might approach you, you've got to show the public that you are you have a disease that is infectious. So the rabbis would very sensibly say, look, you have to wear a veil, like the Muslim ladies wear something. They could see around and they could see there's a table, there's a cup of tea, they could see everything. But it's just an indicator to those around them or anybody attempting to try and approach it. They see the veil and they know, something's the matter. You've got a skin complaint, you've got psoriasis, you've got chicken pox, you've got this, that, the other, and you mustn't, because they've got to contain it and to protect the community from infection. But you see, again, St. Paul would know that. I mean, if you've got leprosy, you see in the films they don't show, well, they do, some films show that, don't they? I have seen in some films, sometimes Hollywood does get it right. In some films, Hollywood films, you know, they have people with leprosy with veils over them, right? So that they are following at the point that if you've got leprosy, you will cover yourself, because it's very important that anybody, or if you think you might have leprosy, anything like that, you've got to cover yourself so that you're indicating to those around you, don't come near me, you could get this leprosy, you know, it's infectious and things, right? Some Hollywood films don't. They have them standing there covered. As a child, it used to frighten me, all the lumps, and you know, it's all, it's horrible, and this is deliberate because they want it, you know. Obviously, they want to show how gross the illness is, you see. And then, of course, Jesus cures them. And then suddenly they're beautiful, you know, sort of perfect skin, you know, like it's, you know, it's like it's like they've been photoshopped, you know, flawless skin, you know, one moment they're covered in lumps, you know, and then suddenly it's like Laurel, isn't it? You know, it's like, what a beautiful skin she's got. It's all photoshopped, you know. This is what Jesus can do, he can photoshop. Right, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful to Christians watching. I hope you've got a sense of humour. I don't mean to be disrespectful to your face and things, but it is like you've been photoshopped. You know, this is what Hollywood does. But you see, St. Paul would know that. He would know that. He'd know about the fact that people have to be covered up. Again, if they've got leprosy. But obviously St. Paul is not thinking about leprosy when he's talking about the veil. He's obviously thinking about the temple. He's thinking about Aaron there standing in front of the veil. Yom Kippur, remember, this is only Yom Kippur this happened. He only goes into the holiest of holies because there's different, you know. Then you go through there and then you go, it's like security. It's like security. No, it's not. Well, it is a bit like, it's like a vault, you know. It's the inner sanctuary. It is, it's like, you know, you go in a prison and you go through one security and then you go through the next security. Then you go through it is really, because you can't just have people just going in the temple and I'm sorry for that. I shouldn't be in here. This is the holiest of holies. I shouldn't be in here. I shouldn't be. I mean, the high priest. This is only for the high priest. You can't have anybody just like, I've gone through in the holiest. I shouldn't be here. You know. I'm being quite serious here because this is the inner sanctuary. This is the holiest of holies. This is the inner sanctuary of God, which only the high priest goes to. Won't see it for the Day of Atonement. You can't have anybody just like, oh dear, I'm sorry, I turned left, I should have turned right, shouldn't I? No, now I'm in the holiest of holies. No, they would have everything set up. Because you will have new priests starting. You've got a young lad. Say you've got a young Levite starting, you know, work experience. Right, we'll train you up now. You're 18. You've left school now, you're going to start, you know. He's following his father. He's a priest there in the temple. You have to teach him. He's not very bright. Maybe he's not on the ball. He's a school leaver. He's learning everything and he's forgotten. What do I do? Do I turn round here and I go through here? And suddenly he could find himself in the holy. What are you doing in the holiest of holies? Get out of there. This is not the Day of Atonement. Meshuggah, what are you doing in there? Get out of there. He'll have to make an atonement for that. What are you doing in there? That is for the holiest of holies. You know you're not supposed to. I'm sorry. Get out, though. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be facetious, but I'm being realistic, because this is how the world is. But God knows this, and he knows he would have an atonement for that. He would know. You get a school leaver. He's training as a priest. And he's not very bright. He's not on the ball. He's told, go down there, turn left, turn there, and you will go there, and then you do that there. No, he doesn't. So he's got it all wrong, and he's got through, and he's in the holiest of holies, and it's like, what you know? Oh, don't go behind that curtain. Don't stay where you are. Don't stay. The priest will go Meshuggah again and say, what's going on? I am serious. Get out. Get out. Did you not read that sign there? You're not supposed to go. But God would have a mechanism for Meshuggahs that go into that inner holies of holies, because these are the kind of things that happens. This is not a problem for God. Remember, the God of Israel knows that. And he knows people are weak. The people are dozy, they're crazy, they forget things, they forget simple instructions, they misunderstand instructions, they forget things. We're frail, and there would be if a mistake happens, or somebody goes into the, I think what happens to I don't think they get put to death. But anyway, I hope you're in with the spirit of what I'm saying. But right, so in other words, what I'm trying to get, it would be difficult, speaking, to get through into that holiest of holies. It's a bit like going in a prison, where you are reaching the innermost part of the prison, where the most dangerous people are, and where the highest security is. It's a bit like Hannibal Lecter. You can't have a situation where anybody just walks in a prison to visit their son who's been sentenced to 6 months behaviour for, to try and stop him sort of knocking off cars or something, or he's a delinquent, we'll just put him in for 6 months and hope he'll learn his lesson and things. But you can't have relatives just visiting a young teenager having access to Hannibal Lecter, where Hannibal Lecter is. In other words, Hannibal Lecter will be situated right in the part of the prison where there's limited access. So if you can see the holiest of holies as limited access, and everything is constructed and arranged so that nobody can accidentally, hopefully, end up find themselves in the holiest of holy, the very place where you're not supposed to be, in the middle of the week. That is only for the day of atonement, Yom Kippur, right? I'm trying to be practical here, and I'm trying to help you to think it through as a realistic living place of a work. This is a work environment. Remember, people are working. This is a 7-day week place. The temple was a place of work, 7 days a week. This place was being used 24/7. This was a working temple, where there's all sorts of things go wrong, and all sorts of misunderstandings arise, and the problems that you get in work, and that happen through human frailty, human weakness, and as I say, God, takes into account of all this. But right, so Paul is probably aware that people who get leprosy perhaps would wear a veil. People with infectious illness would be advised to cover themselves, even if they just were to just say go to the toilet. I'm thinking practically. I'm thinking, you have got a skin disease. You you've been told, separate yourself from the Jewish community for so long, because the period infection and everything. But you're at home and you've got to go to the toilet. So it wouldn't be like you with your own toilet. It's not like everybody's got their own toilet. It would be shared communal activities, places where you would go to. It would be shared toilets. It would be shared. It might be shared, I might not, but you might have your own little thing to wee and poop in. You might have your own little place to wee and poop in. I don't know. I'm just trying to outwork this in a practical way. I'm thinking that if you just had to rush into the yard and think, well, nobody's around yet, I've got psoriasis, I'm covered up with the veil, and I'll run to the toilet and have a wee and then back before anybody sees you. I'm trying to think this practically, and this is a serious point here. So Paul is aware of the covering up of wearing a veil for infectious diseases, but he's not thinking of that, I don't think. He's thinking of the veil. Now, what it says in the Gospels is that when Jesus was crucified, or when he was actually pronounced dead, that what they're alleging is happening, and I say alleging is happening because, hear me out, the veil is supposedly split in two. The curtain is split in two. Jesus was not crucified on the Day of Atonement. Right? He wasn't crucified on Yom Kippur. He was crucified at Passover. Now, at Passover, the high priest does not go into the Holies of Holies. In other words, that place is out of bounds. In other words, there's no reason for anybody to go into the Holies of Holies except for the Day of Atonement. In other words, the Holies of Holies, this place, with the veil, the curtain, whatever, is not used all the year round. It is not used all the year round. It's not like a church where, oh, we must use this church space. Let's have a charity bingo, or let's have a bring and buy sale, or let's use this church, let's not waste the space and let's use it for public debates. Let's use it as a polling station. Because one church I used to attend used the sacred place of the church where people worshipped God as a polling station. They used it as a polling station, and I wrote and complained about this publicly. And of course they hated me for it, because I said this is a sacred space of prayer. What are you using it for as a polling station? Well, I'll tell you why they were using it as a polling station. That is where people go to vote for their members of parliament, and the reason why they were using it as a polling station was because they got money for it, right? The local council paid them. So I think, well, how can we earn a bit of money for the church? I know, we'll use this sacred space where people come and pray to God. We'll use it as a polling station. So if you want to vote for Donald Trump, you can come in here and cast your vote. Right, this is not what the Holies of Holies was like. People just couldn't come in and go, just like, oh, we need somewhere private to discuss. I know, we'll go into the Holies of Holies and have a private chat. No, this is not what the Holies of Holies was used for. It's not like a church. It's not like a vestry. It's not like a quiet corner. It's not like a prayer room. This is a place that is only entered into, a space used only for the Day of Atonement. So people cannot just be going in it. The priest couldn't just go in it. No priest could just walk into that Holies of Holies any time they feel like it. The high priest would only go into the Holies of Holies on Yom Kippur. Right. Now I'm thinking again, I'm always thinking practically about keeping that space clean. Right. Because I'm thinking about keeping it clean. Because you would need to keep the area clean of the Holies of Holies because of the risk of disease and things. Because cleanliness is important. And cleanliness is very important in Judaism. So exceptions, I think, would be made for the cleaning of the temple. But this would again be I think possibly the high priest or the assistant to the high priest. In other words, it would be perhaps a select one or two people who would only be allowed to go into the holies of holies. It probably, perhaps, how many times a year? Perhaps a few times a year maybe, to actually keep it clean. Because I am thinking practically here. Because you've got to keep this sacred space clean. I'm not talking about a dust and polish. Oh, we need to go in and get some polish and give it and tidy it and things. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a place that is so sacred that you don't go into it but once a year. But it's somehow, and it's so sacred that you can't just be going into it willy-nilly for no good reason. So it would be specified times, and for a brief period of times, of just to sort of cleanse that area, the whole area, perhaps with salt and water. The high priest would possibly have salt and water. And that could be part of going in. It might be stipulated, it might be part of what God would expect the religious community to outwork and think about, is cleaning that holiest of holies area. They might do it, say, 3 or 4 times a year. They might have a set day where the high priest goes in with salted water and cleanse the whole area, including the curtain. Everything would have to be cleansed because of disease and things. So I'm just thinking about this practically. But on the day that Jesus was crucified, what they're saying, what they're alleging in the Gospels is that this curtain in the holies of holies, of which the priest is not entering, the high priest is not entering willy-nilly, split in two on when Jesus died. Now the question is, what I'm saying to you is that priest would not be in that holies of holies at the time Jesus died. Right. He wouldn't have been there. It's most unlikely. I think it's so unlikely. I think it's so very, very unlikely. Bearing in mind what I'm also considering of keeping that holies of holies clean. It has to be clean, but I don't think it would be like you and me at home where I've got to give the holies of holies a weekly clean. I don't think it would work like that. I think there would be a prescribed time that the rabbis would set, a sacred time, because it is a sacred place, and this is a sacred spiritual cleansing process that's taking place, of the high priest going there to wipe everything with salted water to get it clean, free of anything. Right. I am not saying it's not impossible that the high priest would suddenly decide at the exact moment that Jesus died, or the time that he was being crucified, to go into that inner holies of holies with a bucket of water, salted water, to start cleaning the holies of holies, and then suddenly the curtain splits. I'm not saying that is impossible. In a fluky way, I am not saying it could not happen. What I'm trying to propose to you is the reality and the percentage in terms of the credibility of that actually happening, bearing in mind that the high priest, does not only go into the holies of holies once a year. He's not allowed to just go in as and when. Oh, I think I'll go in. It's Pesach. It's Passover. I'll just go into. No, I'll just go into the holies of holies. No, that's not how it works. This is not a church. This is a holy temple with prescriptive rulings by the God of Israel of what you can and cannot do. And the priest only goes into the holies of holies once a year at Yom Kippur, right? And maybe other prescribed days for a certain amount of time with the water to cleanse with salted water. And this is a holy activity, a sacred activity. For a limited time, it's hallowed. You'll be doing brachas before you go into the holies of holies. To clean that area of the holies of holies is a sacred thing. It's like, it's like cleaning the chalice of the Holy Communion. The care that people take with the cleaning of it. I mean, it's if you've seen I've seen priests cleaning the cup at the mass. If you see that, you will see the reverence with which they're doing it. They're holding that cup because it's spiritually significant, and they respect it, and it's a very sacred feel. They're showing respect to the process, right? And that's what the high priest would be doing. And what I'm challenging you to think through is the New Testament gospel claim that how would they know that this curtain, this veil in the holies of holies, split in two at the exact time that Jesus died, when he was crucified? Because according to the Hebrew scriptures and the prescribed behaviour of the high priest at that time, and was always in the temple, was you do not go into the holies of holies, that area where that curtain is. You only go on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and if at any other time you go into that holies of holies, it would be only for the cleaning, the sacred cleaning of the area with salted water. You can't just go on a whim. And I think it's so unlikely that he would have decided to go on a whim, on the off chance, at the exact time when Jesus died on the cross. Right? He wouldn't know. Remember, I want you to think about this. There were no mobiles. There was no mobiles. There was no walkie-talkies. There was no internet. If somebody had run from the execution site to the temple, can you just imagine it practically? Jesus has died, right? He seems to have breathed his last. People wouldn't know exactly the exact moment he died, because, and again, something I want to challenge about the words of Jesus saying, "It is finished." As you can just see now, as I've been demonstrating once or twice, I haven't meant to demonstrate this, but when you're very weak, it does affect your speech. It takes strength to talk. You don't realise this, and I didn't realise before I got the serious ME. The nature of severe ME, like people for me in that 10% category and even worse than me, is that they are so exhausted that even speaking wipes them out. And I frequently, every day, at some point of the day or night, become so exhausted I cannot speak. That's how exhausted. I cannot whisper. All the strength is so out of me, and I'm feeling it now a bit. Right? I'm not putting this on to be a drama queen or to illustrate the point. I'm not. This is what I'm suffering at the moment. I just lose it. I lose all the strength. I can't whisper. It's too demanding. Because this is what real exhaustion is. You've seen it on the films. You've seen it on hospital programs. I can't speak. This really does happen to some people, and it happens to me, and I live with it on a daily basis. At some point of the day or night, I get like this. And it's very serious because I live on my own. Now, what has happened to me is, right, I get angina. Anybody who's had angina, very severe, will know what it's like, because you're struggling to breathe. So you've got the chest pains over your heart, the excruciating. You're breathless. You've got the pain down the left arm, so it's very serious. And you're breathless. You're like, this is what you like. You've got to ring, in this country, United Kingdom, 999, 9. In the United States, it's 111. This has happened to me. You ring. What you want to say to them is, help! And what you want them to do, because I'm on a landline phone, I never use a mobile, it's landline deliberately. They can trace me. The emergency operator can trace my telephone number and address with new technology, and they know exactly where I'm living. They can find me. They can say, help, down that phone, and they can immediately send an ambulance to me. They know where I am. It comes up on the screen, my address, it'll have my name, it'll have the details for the ambulance on the exact route and the quickest route to get to me. But despite all that, you dial 999, you can hardly speak. You wish, oh, right, chest pain, you're breathless. What happens every single time is they ask you loads and loads, one question after the other. It's terrible. You're living on your own. You can't breathe. You can hardly breathe. This is exactly the state Jesus would have been in. So I identify, I know exactly how you'd feel before he died, those moments. Because the cause of death was heart failure. That is the cause of death when anybody is crucified. It is always heart failure. The heart, you get constricted here and you die. That's what happens. That is the cause of death. Anybody who's crucified, anybody under any autopsy, every doctor would say the cause of death is heart failure. This is what happens when you die by crucifixion. The chest constricts, it's a pressure so long, and you can't, the breath goes and you die. And that in a sense is what's happening when you get severe angina. You're having a very severe heart attack. It's the same. You're struggling to breathe. My chest is already hurting here, right? So I'm going to take a homeopathic remedy. And this is I've already taken one. Right. It's specifically for this. It's quite high potency what I'm taking. This generally kicks in and works. But I have a very high potency of this called, I mustn't spit it out, 10M, right? This is what's called judgment. If the pain becomes so unbearable that I think I'm going to pass out, this is the dosage I must take. And this, oh shit, sorry, it spat out. This is the dosage I must take, and this is the dosage that could save my life. Now, this is what I'm taking is not unlike what they give you in hospital, or the ambulance give you amyl nitrate. It works the same as amyl nitrate, but it's prepared homeopathically by obviously a homeopathic pharmacy, and it works for me better because it helps with the exhaustion. Because when I get angina, I get exhausted. It's beginning to kick in. I can feel it receding a little bit. If this has been given to Jesus, it would have helped him. But the main point now is keep on track. Get back. You wouldn't have heard Jesus. You wouldn't be able to hear Jesus on the cross, because I know from living with severe ME for 20 years that the biggest complaint I get from people particularly on the phone is they can't hear me. I think I'm shouting, but they can't hear me. And this would have been the same for Jesus on that cross. High up. He's high up, remember. He's not speaking into a microphone. He's not sitting next to you. He's not just across there, just a couple of feet away. This is Jesus high up in the air. Right, he's up there and you're down here. This is a man whose chest is constricted. He can hardly breathe. And he is about to die because the cause of death is heart failure. And people who die from heart failure the minutes before, like what I just had, on a more severe level, is they become breathless. And the pain is so excruciating across the left arm, that they can hardly speak. That's what it's like. It's terrible. This is what I'm like when I ring 999. And it infuriates me. It infuriates me. Where is the pain exactly? When did the pain start? Has the pain extended to the left arm? Are you feeling sick? Are you feeling a headache? Have you been sick? Have you vomited? Do you have abdominal pains? Do you have any pains anywhere else? Are you on any medication? What medication are you on? Oh. I've got this patch, and I hope this will help you. It's just a word of advice, a tip. If you're ever in this position, you have to be mentally prepared for this. The most important thing when you dial 999 in a situation like this is you have to give them the most important information first before they come in with the questions. You have to get in there quick. And what I say every time is, I am having severe chest pains and it's radiating down my left arm. I suffer from high blood pressure. I am on statins. I am on heart medication. Both my parents died at the age of 60 from heart attacks. All my family have died from heart attacks. I am getting pain in my chest. I am age 60. I can hardly breathe. Both my parents have died from heart attacks. Both my parents have died from heart attacks. Age 60. I am age 60 and I have chest pains. This is what I say, and you're thinking, you're Meshuggah, you crazy woman, repeating that over and over again. This is the only way I'm going to get an ambulance sent out for me. I say that over and over and over and over again. All my family are dead because they died from heart attacks. All my family are dead from heart attacks. I am in chest pains. Send an ambulance. I have high blood pressure. I am on statins. I can't breathe. The pain is excruciating. It's all down my left arm. My father's dead. My mother's dead. Send an ambulance. This is what they say before they start asking the questions. Do you know what? Even though I say that, do you know what happens? Well, we need to ask you a few questions. They will not send that, I don't know what's going on there. Now, I think, to be fair to them, I think they do send an emergency responder when they do send that. Because what happens is they always send an emergency responder. And the emergency responder arrives always before the ambulance. But this has happened. I think it's a lot to do with me saying this. I just repeat it over and over again because I want it to get inside that emergency operator's head that this is an emergency and every second counts. And she's got my name and she knows my address. It's there on the computer. This is the world we're living in. Why can't she? No. So this is what happened. So I'm telling you this, do this. You must tell them the most obvious first of all. Tell them you are in excruciating pain. You can't breathe. It's over the chest. It's not indigestion. You have high blood pressure. Tell them that. Say, I have higher blood pressure. I'm on statins. I've already had 3 heart attacks. All my family have died from heart attacks. Send help now, now. Keep saying it, shouting it over as loud as you can. And I'm shouting it. I have to shout as loud as I can. It's still, they're trying to hear what I'm saying. They can hardly hear me because I'm so weak and I'm shouting this over and over again. And the main point I'm getting here, because this is not about me, this is about Jesus, is the fact that they would not have been able to hear Jesus shout, "It is finished." They just would not have been able to hear him shout. I do not believe that because I know what I'm like. When I'm shouting down that phone, people can't hear me. They say, "I can't hear you. Shout, please. We can't hear you." I say, "I'm shouting. Help." And they're still asking all the questions. There's no way anybody would be able to hear the words of Jesus high up on that cross. There's no way the sound would carry. The sound would not carry. It's just common sense when you think about it. Have you ever seen anybody in bed when they're actually dying? Have you seen people in the hospice when they're almost dead, have their last few moments? They're not shouting. They are so weak. They're whispering. Do you know what's happening with the relatives? They're leaning forward like that. That's what it's like. That's what it's really like today. This is so theatrical, the way it's portrayed in the Gospels, but this, I think, is the writer using literary language and getting carried away with himself, which is what we writers can do because we love words. We love to describe things we love to describe things, and this is what we writers have to learn. Anybody who writes, it's very hard. It's not to be over melodramatic. But I think what the writer is doing in the Gospels is being melodramatic. And this is no disrespect to Jesus dying on the cross, because I have researched crucifixion. I do know it's a horrible death. And no. It's not mocking somebody who's dying. I'm telling you the reality of dying. And the reality of dying is people can't shout. They can't shout in those last few moments. And remember, Jesus is high up. The sound will not carry. People would have been down there. Well, they might see his lips move. You see my lips moving? Do you know what I'm saying? Well, I'm not saying anything. I can't get any. When you're in a life, this is what it's like. That's what it's like. That's what I'm like every day, at some point of the day or night. That's what I'm like. I'm just praying to God. I'm just praying to God. Help me speak. Help me speak. If I'm having to ring 999 or 111. Right? So I know Jesus would not be heard. He couldn't get those words out. He would not be able to get those words out. So they wouldn't actually know the moment of death. They would not know the moment of death. The idea of Jesus raising his head, crying out, "It is finished!" I mean, I don't mean to mock, but it's almost like Monty Python. It's almost ridiculous. It's like, are you taking the piss or what? This man won't have the strength to lift his head. It is finished. And everybody down there can hear, Jesus has shouted, it's finished. I'm sorry, but this is not how death is. He would not be able to raise his head up high. Do you know what it's like to be so weak you can't raise your head? I do every day. Because at some point, at any time of the day or night, I start hurting my chest. I start feeling a bit breathless. And then I am so weak, I can't even lie down. I've got a cushion it. I don't even lie down. I can't move. And then I'm praying to God in my mind, help me God, help me God. Please help me, strengthen me God, strengthen me. Every day, at different times of day, this is what it's like. I can't move. I can't raise my head. I'm struggling to open my eyes. It's terrible. This is just with severe ME. Can you imagine with Jesus being crucified, how weak he was? This is the moment of death. Nobody knows exactly the exact moment when he died, because he would be like that anyway. He wouldn't be, his face wouldn't be up there. He wouldn't have the strength to hold his face upright. That's what he would look like. You would not know when he died. Nobody down there looking up at Jesus would know when he was dying. They might think he's dead, and he might not have been dead, ironically. They might look at him and think he's dead, but he's not actually dead. Because people look at me, and this has happened in department stores. I'll sit down on a chair. It's happened so many times, I can't begin to tell you. And I sit there, and I close my eyes, because I feel I'm going to collapse. And then I just sit there, with my eyes closed. People think I've gone to sleep. And they come over to try and wake me. And I say, it's all right, I'm not asleep. All right, I'm not asleep. And I'll just say, it's all right. Because what I'm trying to convey to them, don't worry, I haven't had a heart attack. There's no need to call an ambulance. I just need to be left alone and give me time to recover. This has happened so many times when I tried to go out. I've lost count over 22 years how many times this has happened. And I will say, I'll whisper, sort of say like this. This is what I say to him. I'm all right. It's all right. Don't call on him. Don't. No need. Are you sure you're all right? Yes. Are you sure you don't want us to call an ambulance? Yes. That's what it's like. That's happened to me so much. And it would have been the same for the two robbers on either side of Jesus. You wouldn't be able to hear anything that they said. Jesus would not be able to hear anything they said. The sound would not carry across. He wouldn't be able to hear. He wouldn't be able to catch what they were saying. He wouldn't be able to hear them. So Jesus is the centre, and you've got somebody else being crucified there. He wouldn't hear. There's no way. Because they would be talking like I was just talking. Neither of them would be able to hear each other. It's very lonely death. They weren't sitting up there having a chat. Oh, it's terrible. Oh, you shouldn't be here. You're a good man. I deserve to be here because I've robbed Walmart. I deserve to be here. I'm a thief, but you don't need to do this. No, you don't think I need to be. Let us have a little conversation. This is not what it's like when you're being crucified. You're dying from it's heart failure. Your heart is just. If people can't hear me speak, and I've got severe ME, they can't hear me speak, How the hell are going to hear Jesus in his last moment? So they won't actually know the actual moment when he died. And will that moment, even if they did run to the temple, so they think Jesus has died, they think he seems to be dead, nobody knows. The man hasn't come along to put his spear in his side, so they don't actually know. Is he dead? He looks like he must be dead. I think he moved his lips. But nobody knows. You don't really know. You're not going to know, really. They'll have a doctor there, you know. I'm just thinking now, realistically. They will have had a doctor present at the crucifixions, because crucifixions at the time of Jesus were a weekly event, you know. So this, and you always have doctors. Even in Islam, you always have doctors when, say, if a hand is being cut off, you always have a doctor present. You always have a doctor present, actually. I think under Sharia law, I'm not an expert on this, but I think I would be right in saying that a doctor is present. That the doctor has to be present when somebody is being executed. Well, I suppose when somebody's head is being chopped off, then it's like obvious they're going to be dead. Right. I'm not being facetious here. I'm just trying to think out loud and work it out. Obviously, if somebody's head's going to be chopped off, then they will be dead, right? But if they're going to crucify them, as they might decide to do that, or throw them from the top of a building. So if they throw a homosexual off the top of the building, they will need a doctor there to confirm that the person is actually dead. Because it's not inconceivable that a person could be thrown from a roof and still be alive. And we do hear about this, don't you? People falling from a high rise and they survive. It's incredible. So I think under Islamic law, I think there would be a requirement that in those circumstances a doctor would be needed to be present to confirm the deaths. And I don't know the technicalities, and maybe in a situation like that, it would be considered, perhaps, inverted commas, merciful to continue to kill that person in terms of being, it sounds, I know, bizarre to our way of how we think in the West and everything. But other people have different ways of looking at things. They will say, well, the death penalty has been pronounced, but the person is now still alive and obviously conscious, and so we now have to continue with that death penalty. And they might decide to just put a cushion over the mouth. So the doctor might take a cushion and decide, well, the person is almost dead but not quite dead, and therefore I must complete the process. And so the judge present would say, the person's mouth must be covered. So they'd have to press down with a cushion on the person's mouth, right, for 5 minutes, say. Then the doctor would be asked to check that the person was dead again. So they'd be taking the pulse, they would be listening with the stethoscope, they do what they do to be sure that the person has died, and they might even be required, again, laws vary in different cultures and countries, to come back again maybe an hour later to confirm that the person is still dead, right? Because they have pronounced the death sentence and they can't have somebody's in limbo. So they, this is just the reality of it. This is what they would have to do. So I'm just, right. So I don't want to go off the subject, right? So in terms of where the crucifixion, there would be a doctor there present, because when they take the person down from the cross, they need a doctor to confirm that the person is actually dead. Right. Because the person is in such a state that how could an ordinary centurion really recognise when the person is actually, if they are, I mean, they might say them, obviously they must be dead, they've been up there so many hours, they've got to be dead. You know, you and I would say after 24 hours, oh, they must be dead by now. But Rome would not think like that. The judicial system of Rome would not be thinking like that. They would be saying, no, get the doctor. It's got to be done properly. They say, the doctor's got to confirm that the person is dead, right? Because the death penalty has been pronounced. And they can't have somebody sort of coming to and say, oh, I think I'll be all right now. You know, I was up there 16 hours, but I think he'll be all right now. He's been up there 16 hours, but I think if we take care of him, you know, and look after him and give him lots of, you know, just give him light meals, give him lots of water 2 hourly, I think Jesus could be all right and not be dead anymore. I'm being quite serious here. So I think that when Jesus was taken down from the cross, in common with everybody else that was crucified on that day, the doctor would have to test to check that he was dead. So they're checking the pulse, they're listening to the heart, the mouth, the breath, right, everything. And they might, well, under a Roman law, they might come back an hour later, 2 hours later, and again check that they are actually still dead, because they would not go and bury them, obviously, because if the person were to come to, I mean, you know, they have to cover the base, and because particularly with somebody like Jesus, they have to be sure he's dead, because they've got to be sure he's dead, because there is this theory, some people have the theory that Jesus wasn't dead, and that they put him in the tomb, he had a sleep, he recovered from, he wasn't actually dead, he was just in a bad state, and that he actually recovered, he hadn't suffered heart failure, he hadn't actually died, and that he wasn't actually dead. And there is this argument, and it's very strongly believed by an awful lot of people. But again, I would challenge this with saying that surely it will be the norm in Roman times that when you're crucifying people, you have to they would have it confirmed by a doctor that the person is actually dead, because they need to be sure that the penalty of death has taken effect. You can't have people sentenced to death and then the death penalty implemented and then the person not actually dying from the death penalty. You can't have people defined as being put to death by crucifixion and everybody's recovering after 12 hours of being crucified. So, well, I think he'll make a recovery, actually. I think he's doing quite well. I think he's going to recover from this crucifixion. He's quite strong. His heart's we've been able to withstand 16 hours of crucifixion, and I think with light foods and, not solids, and don't work for a week, take it easy. I think you could recover from this crucifixion. No, it wouldn't be like that. So what I'm challenging is here is they don't know the exact moment Jesus has died. So how can they know the exact moment? And this is where I work my way around, and I'm sorry if I've taken too long. I'm working round to the point that they don't actually know the exact moment Jesus died. And even if they did, they need somebody like a little boy or somebody, a fast runner, an adult, to run to the temple. Right? They then have to find the high priest. Now, have you ever tried getting through tiers of authority for anything? Oh, yeah. Have you ever been to any government department? Have you ever visited any large institution and to try and speak to the person at the top? Impossible. Impossible. There's reception. Hello. Hello, somebody at reception of the temple. Hello, can I help you? Hello. I want to see the high priest. Could you tell me what it's about, please? So 10 minutes later, out comes somebody or other. The high priest is busy at the moment. I am the secretary to the secretary of the secretary, and I am priest Levite somebody. How can I help you? Well, I really need to speak to the high priest. I want him to go inside the Holy of Holies. He needs to go inside the Holy of Holies. But, as you know, the high priest only goes in on the Day of Atonement. Could you tell me what this is about? Well, this is about, you've heard of this man Jesus. Well, he's just been crucified. And we need to know what's been happening. What is there anything happened in the Holies of Holies? Well, what kind of things? What kind of things would you think? Could you say, take a seat here? What is it? Do you think could be happening? Well, I don't know. Is anything happened? Has anything changed? Could it, but it's really better. Can I speak to the high priest? And I really, what position are you anyway? Could you tell me who are you? Who are you? Well, I hold the position of secretary of the undersecretary of the service of the high priest. Well, I'm sorry. I want to speak to the person above. Who is the person above you? Because we Jewish people, we want to go to the top. We're not listening. Who is this little? The schlepper down here. We're not. It's a little priest here. The schlepper. No, we don't want to speak to you. No. We're not speaking to the lactate. What's who is it? Nobody. We want to speak to somebody we want to speak to. We want to speak to the assistant. We want to speak to the big boy. Right. So we want Aaron. We want so and so's assistant. We want I'm sick of. I'm sorry. This is not good enough. Do you know who I am? Get so and so. So 10 minutes later, another 10 minutes later, you get the high priest, under secretary to the high priest. Right. I want to know, is there any changes happened in the Holies of Holies? Well, what do you mean, changes? What about the curtain in the Holies? I understand there's a curtain in the Holies of Holies. Well, yes, there's a veil, yeah. Is there anything happened then? What do you mean? What do you think? I mean, is it still there? Has anything happened? Does it look any different, the Holies of Holies? Does it look like anything? Is there anything different happening in the temple? Well, what do you mean? What are you expecting to happen? Well, this man has been crucified, Jesus, and the people think he's the Messiah. And we're just wanting to know maybe something's happened. Has something happened? Anyway, has anything happened? Is anything unusual happened in the temple? Anything? Well, what do you mean? No, nothing. It goes away. Would you like a cup of tea while you're waiting? Would you like a cup of tea? No, I don't want a cup of tea. Why is it taking so long? Well, the high priest is very, very busy today. Right. So, what is all the what's going to come? I'm sorry to bother you, high priest. I'm sorry to bother. What is it? Well, somebody wants to know if there's anything happened anywhere in the temple that's different. Why? What's the different? Well, they did that Jesus, the one they did. I think the sugar. What they think is the mission. You want to know, has anything happened here? Because he's just died. I want to know something. What do you know? What could happen? They think that something might have happened in the Holies of Holies. Maybe something to do with the curtain. Has something happened with the curtain? Well, why? What could happen to the curtain? Nothing. So he's talking to his assistant. Well, what could happen What could happen? Well, I don't know what could happen. We can't go in. We can't go in. We can't go in. But could we find a reason to go in to see what could happen? When did it go? When we could? What pretext could we go into the holies of holies? Well, when did it last get cleaned? We could get some more. We could get some hot water and some salt and to clean it. So the high priest, this maybe on a fluke he could perhaps an hour later, the high priest, 2 hours later after Jesus has died, he could get some hot water with salt in it. He might say, well, I'll make an excuse of going into the holies of holies just to see if anything untoward has happened because this man has died. I'm just using my imagination here. He's got the excuse of cleaning it. So I'm trying to imagine this, so it's split in two. Does any of this make sense to you? I am trying to, in a way, I'm trying to look at it from your point of view to people that actually believe this. That's why I'm coming up with all these imaginative scenarios. I'm trying to look at it from your point of view and say, is it credible? Is it realistic? We don't know the time of death when he actually died. We don't know. We don't know exactly. And then we've got to have the pronouncement of death. And again, we don't know when the official pronouncement of death was. We only know people looking and thinking, is he dead? He looks like he's dead. We don't know. We don't know the time of death. It isn't being recorded that Dr. So-and-so, and he gave an examination at so-and-so and so-and-so, and it's recorded time of death, because this is what time of death is. Doctors always have to record the time of death. And it occurred at so-and-so and so-and-so. They also have to give witnesses. Did you know that? So-and-so was present at the time of death. We haven't got this in the account. Then they've got to schlep over to the temple. Then they've got to spend, how long have they got to spend trying to get to the powers that be and the high priest to get to find out if the veil has split in two? If there's been any changes in the temple, unusual, strange, peculiar, weird. To try and get that sorted out in any administrative process, can you imagine? Hours. I've been waiting 2 hours. And I still haven't got to make a question. All I want to know is anything different happened today in the temple. Well, everybody's very busy, you know. It's Pesach, what do you expect? I'm just looking at it from your point of view. And I'm trying to see it from your point of view. But it doesn't add up. And you've got to ask the question, does this add up? How would anybody know if that curtain, the veil in the curtain, had split in two? And if it had split in two, when would they have found out it split in two? Because remember, nobody knows when Jesus died. They don't know his death, the time. They don't know the exact moment he died. They don't have the time of death. They don't know when anybody in the temple knew that Jesus had died. They don't know the time of death. They don't know when and if the veil in the Holies of Holies had split in two. If it had split in two, when did it happen? When did it happen? It would mean that the high priest would have to be in that temple at the exact moment when it split in two. But we don't know the exact moment when the high priest was in that temple, if he ever went into that temple, which is 99% most unlikely. And we don't know the exact moment Jesus died, or the time of death. Right. So how can these writers say with, and how can people believe with certainty at the moment Jesus died, that veil, that curtain in the temple split in two? Because we don't actually know the time of death. We don't know the moment of death, because we can't hear him, we can't see his heart beating, we can't reach his hand to take his pulse. We only know if he's actually dead when he's taken down from that cross and the doctor has Take his pulse, listen to his heart, listen that, check for time for his death, pronounce the time of death with the witnesses, and then double check perhaps an hour later to check the person was still dead, that they hadn't slightly revived, because people do can revive. We do hear of this. It's not so unusual. And Rome would want that man dead. They want to be certain he's dead, and they would have a doctor there. So this does not add up. It doesn't add up. And I think what you have here is a very enthusiastic writer. And remember, this is, with the accounts in the Gospels, you don't have what you would normally have, which you expect from CNN News, BBC News, the New York Times. What you expect from journalists, reporters, and so on, is you need to know the sources of the information. In other words, people, the gospel writer needs to know who was present at the time of death, who pronounced the death, what time was the death, the cause of death, and who were the witnesses, right? You need this. All editors of news channels and newspapers need, from their editors, they need sources. They need to know, who is your source? Who, because they're wanting to check the validity of statements, right? They're wanting to check and you need all the details. So who was present in the Holy of Holies when that veil in the Holy of Holies was found to be split? In other words, a person recording that account should have known who the high priest was at that time, the name of the high priest, and confirmation that it was that high priest who was there, who saw that curtain split in two. I am talking about very detailed information here, and this is about what's called giving a proper account. Because otherwise, if you don't get the names of people who supposedly saw this, and their titles, and the time, and the dates, and so on, how can you say this is a valid account and dependable and accurate? And this is what reporters are asked to do. This is what all journalists are asked to do. So you've got the writers of the Gospels coming at the minimum 20 years, like 50 AD, after the death of Jesus, right? That's 20 years after his death. They're now researching the death of Jesus. They need to get so much detail. They need the names of people. They need the names of people. Why haven't we got the names of people? We need perhaps not just one witness, but two. I want to know who was the doctor present at that crucifixion. There would have been a doctor present. I want to know who the high priest was, who was in the holies that was there at the time of Jesus. I want to know, was he there? Did he actually see it? Has he confirmed it, that he actually went into the Holies of Holies and saw this split curtain? Has there been another witness to confirm what the high priest saw? Because if that would have happened, I think the high priest would have called him his second in command. I am certain of it. I am certain of it. If that curtain had split in two, what they're saying in the New Testament, that high priest would have called his second in command, because that's what you do in situations like this. This is what you would do. So, I can't believe it. Come in and see this. This is a once in a lifetime thing to happen. They would be getting together, the high priest and probably a few select the higher beings around him. The big shots, the machas, the big high priest and this and that, the other. They'd be getting together. There would have been a meeting about this. There's no mention of that. This would have been recorded. This would have been debated. This would be, what on earth's going on here? We get none of this. There's nothing in there to say that. You see, my instinct is, I think this is just gossip. One of the things I've noticed, and I'm sure you've noticed it, despite new technology, despite internet, mobile phones, people being able to come straight in there, despite everything that we have with new technology, you still find inaccuracies in accounts of events that happen. Really major inaccuracies. In other words, you are told by a newspaper, a respectable newspaper, or a respectable TV channel that has, very good, excellent journalists and reporters. I'm not knocking them, very, experienced, who get the information wrong. Somehow we're getting the facts wrong. One day the murderer is 28 and married. The next day the information we're getting is the person is unmarried and aged 32. Right? The murderer works as a baker. The next day, the worker is unemployed. Can't you get your basic facts right? They can't seem to get the basic facts right. And they're there at the time. I mean, how easy is it to get basic research for you and me on the internet? You Google somebody. Oh, this person just committed a murder, so you can find out very easily, with the way the world works now with Facebook and everything. You can find out their age, where they live, what their occupation is, everything. You can be accurate with this information. But what I found time and time again is that the world press, the world newspapers, the world television stations are continually getting basic information incorrect. And you're thinking, how is this possible? When the information is so easy to access. Another thing, I use the word gossip. I think the word I'm really thinking of is what happens when crime is committed, or when anything happens in the world that's incredible or bizarre or strange, or a volcano or earthquake or anything. It's not so much gossip as rumour that becomes gossip. In other words, it's like Chinese whispers. People sort of hear something, and then as they tell somebody, they embellish it a bit. And it's not that they're meaning to lie. I don't think it's meaning people to lie. I think people like embellishing things. I'm trying to explain it in a way that you will relate to, and that will feel, I get this. Say a friend at work tells you about something that happened when you were off sick at work. Do you know what? Mr. So-and-so came in the other day when you were off sick. He wasn't very happy. I said, no. He's complaining about this and complaining about that. So what do? You tell another colleague. You ring up a colleague, you say, you know, Mr. So-and-so came in, he was furious yesterday. I've just been told, my friend told me. He's furious, he's hopping mad. Really, what's he hopping mad about? I don't know, he's in a right temper. So then what happens? This friend rings another friend. And what does she say? You better be careful when you go in tomorrow, work tomorrow. He is in such a temper, Mr. So-and-so, I'm telling you. And he's threatened if anything like this happens again. He was quite threatening as well. So they add something to it. And everybody was frightened. I mean, he got so angry with everybody. Everybody was frightened. Well, this is something added. I mean, originally there was no mention of anybody being frightened, but somehow the person is using their imagination and they're thinking it must have been quite frightening when the boss came in a temper. So they've added information with their imagination. They're thinking, well, it must have been quite frightening if the boss was angry. So then they tell somebody, yeah, he was very angry, and I think people were quite frightened of him. And then that person says, everybody at work was really scared of Mr. So-and-so the other day, you know. They just didn't know what was going to happen. He was so angry. It just shows you how unpredictable he is when he gets angry. It's just everybody embellishes it. And I don't think people mean to. I think what happens, you hear something, you imagine it, and then you add to it. Because we do like to create. We are a creative beings. And there's nothing more creative than a journalist or a writer. Because we love to embellish things. We love to add drama to things. And what is so dramatic about the death of Jesus? Let's have him crying out. The person doesn't know it. They don't. What do they know about being crucified? What do they know about being chronically sick? What do they know what it's like to die from heart failure? What do they know to be breathless? What do they know to have a dry mouth? But they just use their imagination. They think, oh, he cried out. I'm finished. It is finished. You know, it's stupid. It is so stupid. I mean, I'm laughing, but it's so ridiculous. But this is happening because the writer is using the imagination of what it must be like to be dying. And Jesus cried, perhaps, you know, and he would have, they think he would have cried out. But they weren't there, they didn't hear him, nobody's heard him, nobody knows what he's saying. And they're thinking to himself, well, what would he have said at the very last? What could he have said? What could have Jesus said at the last moment? Well, at the last moment, he could have just said, he could have said nothing, actually. He could have, that's more likely. I think that's more likely. He might have been thinking the Shema. You see, I think it's about what you're thinking, because when you're very weak, it's all about what you're thinking, not what you're saying. Because a lot of people who've done research into crime and they write crime fiction, they have a lot of knowledge about crime. And the best writers do their research and they know about crime. And often the main character, when they can't speak, the victim, and they're being held hostage, they can't speak because they've got gags on them or they're being deprived of water. What the writer will do will be tell you what the victim is thinking. Because those who do research for crime fiction know that invariably victims cannot speak because they're either bound with tape or anything, or they've been deprived of water so they can't actually speak. Their mouth is so dry. When your mouth is very dry, you can't speak. So those who do the research, the best crime writers, know this. So what they do is they tell you what the victim is feeling. Now, what the gospel writer has done is telling you what they think Jesus would have. They're telling you what they think he might have said. What they might have been better to do is to say, I wonder what Jesus would have been thinking. He might have said the Shema to himself in his mind. I think that's realistic. If the writer had said, I wonder if at that moment when Jesus died, he thought of the Shema, he said the Shema, that would not be inconceivable, because an Orthodox Jew would be of the mindset of thinking the Shema. But again, I'm thinking realistically, and the realistic way when people are dying. As somebody who's very weak, it would be more like, can you can you hear that? I can't say Shema because I'm so weak. I'm saying They wouldn't be able to hear that. That's more realistic, but they wouldn't be able to hear that. But I don't think the gospel writer's a very good writer, because they haven't got much of an imagination either. Because I don't even think if he could speak, he would have made a pronouncement of it is finished. It would be like, I think it would be more like Shema. I think if there's anything you would hear would be Shema. Shema God. Eloheinu. That's it. Eloheinu. Adonai. But you wouldn't know that. He would only know that from using his imagination. So it's inaccurate. And this video's gone on for nearly 2 hours. So listening to this is not for the faint-hearted, is it? And you're thinking, couldn't you have done this in 30 minutes? Possibly I will be able to do it again at another point, because I'm going to listen back to this tape, and it might help me to get my thoughts together and perhaps re-explain it for a 30-minute video for those that can't bear to listen to it. But I think the fact that it's taken me 2 hours to explain it to you shows you how important it is that we actually do explore this very, very fully, because this is what I'm trying to do here. I am not trying to give you a soundbite here. I am trying to give you something in-depth, detailed, meaty for you to actually think about. Because really, that is what critical analysis should be. And I'm sorry to say, and I don't mean to be rude, but I don't hear this from Professor Michael Brown, who is the world's leading apologist for Messianic Judaism. I do not hear in his speech, nor do I hear in one book that I read, I do not hear detail. And quite honestly, if I'm listening to a professor, I want detail. Because that's what we all want from professors, is the detail. You want to listen to a professor of any subject because you want the detail. You want to know the ins and outs of everything. That's why you want to listen to a professor. You want to see a professor of cardiology because you want to hear everything. You want to understand it fully. And you know if you see a cardiologist and ask those questions, that cardiologist, as a professor, will be to give you all the details. They are the experts. And I want all the details when I am considering the Hebrew Scriptures. I want all the details if I'm going to consider anything in the New Testament or anything in the Gospels. And what I'm trying to give you here and help you to do, which the church cannot do, it fails miserably. Because It doesn't question, it doesn't think round the box, it doesn't look under the box, nothing. What I'm trying to do in my weakened state as a person who is not a professor is trying to help you to think around those things that you believed without thinking, and which I believed for 42 years. Because as a Jewish believer for 42 years, I never thought of anything really much about what I have said to you. It would cross my mind bits and pieces, but I didn't take it further, which I should have done. I was at fault. I should have done. In other words, when the alarm bells rang 30 years ago, when I was studying theology and certain things that made no sense to me, and I researched it, it still made no sense. I researched it more, it still didn't add up. Instead of going with the flow and getting into more and more research, I didn't. And I'll admit one of the reasons is I was not prepared to re-examine my faith from a Jewish perspective, from the rabbi's perspective. And I'll tell you why. It's because I was clinging on to dear life to a spiritual experience that I had right at the beginning. Because like you, who's had a lot of spiritual experiences, it meant a great deal to me. And my faith, I believe, not in common with Professor Michael Brown, and not in common with St. Paul, my faith was, I think, predominantly based on a spiritual experience, right? The encounter, the perceived spiritual encounter, the encounter with God, perhaps the encounter with Christ, like St. Paul had the encounter with what he believed was Jesus, what he believed was real, right? Because originally St. Paul, on his critical analysis of the Hebrew scriptures, knew Jesus couldn't be the Messiah. He knew he was speaking blasphemy. But because of his overwhelming, convincing spiritual experience of his encounter with an apparition of something or other that he believed with Jesus with complete conviction, in the same way you've had spiritual experience, which I don't doubt, which I do believe that you've had. I am not thinking it's that you're silly or stupid, because I've had them. I know that it feels genuine. I know it's overwhelming. It's convincing. It's so convincing. And it was that spiritual experience which I was clinging on to, continued to cling on to for another 30 years. So that's 42 years. And it was only after 42 years that I accidentally, and I do say accidentally, decided, I'm going to close my eyes because it might help with the resting of it, to re-examine my faith from the Jewish point of view, to listen to what the rabbis had to say, because I'd never really investigated it fully. Right, I think I'm going to have to take, where's my tablets gone? Oh yeah, right, I think I need to take, I'm not getting a heart attack, it's not going to, what done here? This is it, where is it? Oh, I've lost it. Just wait there, don't click, I'm not going, oh it's here, don't worry, I'm not going to drop dead down. I'm not going to drop down dead, don't worry. Oh, this one, I was watching a video, she dropped down dead. No, you don't need me. No, don't worry, it's not going to happen. No. I refuse to die in the name of the God of Israel. I rebuke my chest pains in the name of the God of Israel. I rebuke my angina in the name of the God of Israel. I'm being quite serious here. I'm being quite serious. I claim the breath to speak in the name of the God of Israel. Do you know this has the same power as what you believe in terms of Jesus? You believe that there's power in the name of Jesus, but did you know there's power in the name of Almighty God and the God of Israel? I ask Lord God of the universe to strengthen me, to give me the strength, to strengthen me, to enable to speak, to continue this video, that you would slow down my heart, that you would deliver me from all the effects of angina, by your mighty power, to show the supremacy and sovereignty of your power in my life. Just as you displayed your mighty power to Elijah, licking up the waters, so I ask, Lord God of the universe, the God of Israel, to demonstrate your mighty power in my body and strengthen me, because you are God and there is no other. And I often say this, what I've just said to God. Do you know, if you perhaps don't realise if you're Christian, that this works? You think it's the name of Jesus, it's only the name of Jesus that can cause things to work in the spiritual realm. But the thing is, have that considered that God can work? The name of God, believing in the God of Israel. And perhaps I should have said this earlier, shouldn't I? When I started with the breathlessness. That's me. Do you know, I get so annoyed with myself because you would think, having getting angina so regularly, that I would sort of follow the emergency procedure. But sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I immediately respond and ask God to help me, and other times I get the same symptoms and I don't think of doing it, and it's very annoying. I don't understand why this is. It really annoys me because, I mean, I should know by now, after 22 years of this illness, of getting breathless, that if it's very bad, I need to ask God to help me. But I sometimes remember and sometimes I don't forget to ask God to help me. But better late than never, and I just asked him to help me. Just feel a bit tingly, but I'll be alright. It feels like pins and needles a little bit in my fingers, my left hand. It's more on the right side, but with women it can often be the right side. So the medication, sometimes I take when it starts on the right side, because a lot of women, the symptoms of angina start on the right side and then moves across over here gradually. So it can start here and you think, oh no, there's nothing the matter, it's perhaps indigestion. What I've learned, probably the last 20 years, is that it can start here. And if I take the cardiac remedy, homeopathic remedy, it does work. It nips it, it starts to recede. Right. But the remedy is now working. And remember, this is combining with the power of God. So God is using this remedy. And it's also helping me. So it's all God. I put it all as God. I like to give God the credit because he's working through the medication. He's choosing to work through this particular medication that is suitable. And I have got Acignite. Sometimes if this particular remedy doesn't kick in for any reason, then I can use Acignite. And it's very complicated, homeopathy. I have been studying it for many years because this is the way I try and help myself with my symptoms. So, in other words, I have to think quickly. If a remedy isn't quite working the same, then perhaps I need to think of another remedy that is also can be effective for the same symptoms. It gets very complicated, but sometimes a remedy that often works doesn't work, and then take another remedy like Ignite, and it does work. And also, I do remember taking this remedy one day, and I have never experienced such excruciating pain over my heart and down my left arm. And I really thought I was going to drop down dead. And I had the phone in my hand, the right side, you know, the phone where you ring 999, and you know, that asks you all these questions. I can hardly breathe, and I started rolling about on the bed. That's how bad the pain was. If you've had angina, you'll know what I mean. So the phone's in the landline phone, you know, I'm holding it. Angina's very bad. I've taken the remedy because I know from 20 years of experience that this works. Well, it's silly to call an ambulance if this stops the chest pain. And within a few minutes it recedes, and then, you know, you go to bed and rest, and, you know, you get over it. And then I'm saving the government so much money. Saving the government so much money. But this was very bad. I was crawling round the bed, and I thought, this is serious. I've never had this before. And do you know what I said? This is I refuse to die. I refuse to die in the name of God Almighty. I refuse to die in the name of God. I refuse to die in the name of God. I refuse to die in the name of God of Israel. I refuse to die in the name of God of Israel. I refuse to die in the name of God of Israel. God will keep me alive. God will keep me alive. I'm alive by the power of God. I'm alive by the power of God. I refuse to die in the name of God of Israel. And I was sort of crying out this, but I was saying it in my mind as well. I was trying to get the words out. And do you know what happened? It reached. It was so bad, and I'd taken the tablet, and it didn't seem to be kicking in. Nothing. And you have to wait, and what seems like 30 seconds seems like, oh yeah, the pain. And I'm just ready to ring the 999, and then suddenly, I couldn't believe it. It just stopped. And when I mean it just stopped, all of that excruciating pain in my left arm and the chest just stopped. I couldn't believe it. It just, everything stopped. And do you know how I felt? I didn't feel like exhausted like I normally feel after I've had an angina attack. Because normally I feel a bit frail. I go to bed and I rest, which is the correct thing to do, recover. Do you know how I felt? I felt fantastic. I felt as if it never happened. I thought, blimey, it's worked. It's worked. It's chutzpah. What have I got to lose? I refuse to die in the name of the God of Israel. Why not? That's Jewish. That's chutzpah. If you want a definition of chutzpah, that's the ultimate chutzpah. I refuse to die. I refuse to die. I refuse to die in the name of the God of Israel. I don't want to die. No, I refuse to die. In the name of the God of Israel, I refuse. And do you know what it made me realise? That Christians don't realise this. I suddenly realised Christians don't realise the power of God. All of Christianity is based on the power of Jesus. And I thought, how undermining this is for God. Because do you know, before Jesus came, if you prayed to the God of Israel that he would help you, does a Christian not realise the power of Hashem, the power of God? Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. I'm not going to die. I refuse to die. I claim life. I refuse to die. I refuse to die from angina. I want to live. I want to live. I don't want to drop down dead. No. I'm angina. And why shouldn't God honour that? Why shouldn't he? I've chosen life. I choose life. In the name of the God of Israel, I choose life. I refuse to die in the name of the God of Israel. With angina. What's wrong with saying that? But it worked. It worked. I thought, but with any Christian, believe me. They're so focused on Jesus, 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 Jesus. And maybe Jewish people don't realise this. You know, by all means, I'm not saying don't die on 999. I'm not saying don't die on 999. I'm saying while you're waiting, say, we claim life for Jaime Cohen in the name of the God of Israel. The God of Israel, don't let him die. In the name of the God of Israel, we claim life. We claim life for Jaime Cohen for his chest pains in the name of the God of Israel.